They say walls have ears. But in Elm Hollow, Pennsylvania, one wall did more than listen. It held a terrible secret for nearly a decade. It was supposed to be a fresh start. On March 3, 2023, the Morgan family had just moved into their new fixer-upper in Elm Hollow, a small, tight-knit town about 40 minutes from Harrisburg. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where doors were left unlocked, and where stories rarely made the front page. The Morgans, James, his wife Caitlin, and their two boys, Liam and Ryan, were excited to restore the old colonial home on Maplewood Lane. The previous owners had died in a car accident, and the house had sat vacant for nearly 2 years. It was a quiet Friday afternoon when the horror began to unfold. James Morgan, an electrical technician by trade, decided to finally tackle the basement. The dimly lit, cobwebbed space had a peculiar section along the far wall, a rectangular shape that looked slightly off from the rest of the stone foundation. There were faint cracks, discoloration, and a strange draft that carried with it a smell. "I thought maybe raccoons had died in there," James would later tell investigators. But the smell, it was different. It clung to your throat. He grabbed his tools and began to remove what he assumed was a poorly constructed drywall patch. With each swing of the hammer, something shifted behind the wall, a hollow cavity, and then something fell forward. A hand, mummified, curled, fingernails still painted pale pink. James screamed, dropped the flashlight. Caitlin, who had been upstairs unpacking, heard the thud, and her husband's voice, a sound she had never heard from him before. By the time emergency services arrived, James was sitting outside on the curb, trembling. His two boys were taken to the neighbor's house across the street. The house was immediately sealed off with yellow tape, and within an hour, the quiet suburb of Elm Hollow was crawling with law enforcement. Officer Mandy Russo, first on scene, said it was the most grotesque thing she'd ever encountered in her 11 years with the Dauphin County Sheriff's Office. The body was partially curled, stuffed behind a false panel, sealed with plywood and insulation foam. The space had been concealed so thoroughly it had evaded detection during 3 prior home sales. Russo's radio call came in at exactly 3:18 p.m. "Dispatch, we have what appears to be human remains hidden behind a structural wall. Calling in homicide and forensics immediately. House is secured." By nightfall, the property had been cordoned off entirely. Floodlights were brought in. Neighbors peered from behind drawn curtains. The scent, now confirmed to be decayed flesh mixed with mildew, saturated the air for several blocks. Crime scene investigators, wearing full hazmat suits, began the painstaking process of removing the remains. The initial findings were haunting. The body had been wrapped in an old shower curtain. Tape residue was found around the wrists and ankles. A faded silver necklace with a butterfly pendant still hung loosely from her neck. Forensic pathologist Dr. Alyssa Kim gave an early estimate that the body had been concealed for at least 7 to 10 years. Mummification, due to the lack of airflow and low temperatures in the cavity, had preserved the remains unnaturally well. But one detail chilled the team to the bone. The victim's eyes had been taped open. News broke the following morning. "Body discovered in basement wall of Elm Hollow home, police investigating as homicide," read the headline in the Harrisburg Herald. Speculation ran wild. Residents recalled an old urban legend about the house being bad luck. One elderly woman, Martha Bledsoe, claimed she had heard strange thumping noises when her cousin rented the house in 2018. She always believed it was haunted. "I told her the house didn't feel right," Martha said during an on-camera interview. "It was cold, like heavy." The police, now under pressure from the press and an increasingly unnerved community, launched a full-scale homicide investigation. Detective Raymond LeClaire, lead investigator from the Dauphin County Major Crimes Unit, was assigned the case. A seasoned professional known for cracking cold cases, LeClaire immediately ordered DNA extraction and a re-examination of all missing person reports in the area from 2010 to 2017. By March 7th, early forensic analysis had yielded a preliminary profile. Caucasian female, mid to late 20s, estimated time of death between May 2014 and August 2015. Signs of blunt force trauma to the head, possible ligature marks on the neck. The town's anxiety deepened as the mystery grew more real, more human. Who was she? The breakthrough came on March 10, 2023. A partial DNA match connected the remains to a woman named Angela Dawn, a 28-year-old elementary school teacher who had vanished from Elm Hollow on June 14, 2014. Her disappearance had shaken the town at the time, but with no leads, no witnesses, and no body, the case went cold within 2 years. Angela's car had been found abandoned at the Ridgefield Park trailhead, keys still in the ignition. Many believed she had taken her own life in the woods, a theory quietly accepted by some, though her family always insisted she would never leave without a goodbye. Now, nearly 9 years later, Angela had been found, just blocks from where she lived. The very home where her body was discovered. She had once babysat there for a family named Turner when she was in high school. Detective LeClaire held a press conference on March 12th. We have confirmed the identity of the victim as Angela Dawn, who disappeared in 2014. This case is now an active homicide investigation. We urge anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. We are determined to bring her killer to justice. For the Morgan family, their dream home had become a crime scene. They checked into a motel. Their furniture remained untouched. Caitlin, interviewed off camera, said, "I can't even go near that house. Every time I close my eyes, I see that wall." But for Angela Dawn's parents, Victor and Mary Ann, it was a moment of bittersweet closure. A chapter reopened. A silent scream finally heard. For nearly a decade, the house stood quiet. People laughed within its walls, celebrated birthdays, watched football games, all while a young woman's body lay just a few inches away, entombed behind a lie. But now, with her name finally spoken again, Angela's story was no longer buried. Before she became a headline, before her name was whispered across Elm Hollow with haunted reverence, Angela Dawn was simply someone people loved. Angela Marie Dawn was born on September 16, 1985, in York, Pennsylvania, but she spent most of her life in the quiet town of Elm Hollow. Her father, Victor Dawn, was a retired firefighter. Her mother, Mary Ann, a homemaker and part-time florist. She had no siblings, but she never lacked love, not from her tight-knit family, her students, or her friends. Photos of Angela paint a picture of warmth. Chestnut brown hair, often tied up in a lazy ponytail. Hazel eyes with flecks of green. A freckle on the left side of her chin. People said she had a smile that made you feel like everything would be okay. She graduated from Elm Hollow High School in 2003 with honors and a full scholarship to Millersville University, where she studied early childhood education. She returned home in 2007 and quickly became one of the most beloved teachers at Willow Creek Elementary School, just 2 blocks from her childhood home. "She had this presence," said Miss Darlene Fisher, the school's principal. "Like she could calm a crying child just by walking into the room." Parents adored her. The kids would cling to her like she was a Disney character. Angela had a routine simple, stable, and structured. Monday through Friday, she'd be at school by 7:15 a.m. After work, she'd stop by Kelly's Grocers, pick up dinner, call her mom, and return home. She attended St. Martha's Church every Sunday, volunteered at the Elm Hollow Library once a month, and led the school's spring musical every year without fail. But behind the routine was a heart full of hope, and some pain no one truly saw. June 14, 2014, a date carved into the town's collective memory. It was a Saturday and by all accounts, a normal summer day. Angela had texted her mother at 9:22 a.m. "Heading out for a bit. Might grab lunch. Love you." It was the last anyone heard from her. Surveillance footage from Frankie's Diner, just off Main Street, showed Angela entering alone at 11:04 a.m. She ordered a coffee, a tuna melt, and spent most of the time scrolling on her phone. She left just after 11:45 a.m. What happened between that moment and the time her car was found remains a black hole. Her 2010 white Honda Accord was discovered 2 days later, parked at the Ridgefield trailhead, roughly 6 miles from town. The keys were in the ignition. Her purse sat on the passenger seat. Phone gone. No sign of struggle. No footprints. No blood. Just a perfectly still summer afternoon frozen in fear. Search teams scoured the forest for days. Helicopters, K-9 units, hundreds of volunteers. Nothing. The town unraveled. Flyers were stapled to every telephone pole. Candlelight vigils became weekly events. Angela's face was printed in every local paper for months. But the lack of leads, no calls, no suspects, no sightings turned hope into frustration. Rumors swirled. She ran away. Maybe she had a secret life. She probably committed suicide. Her parents refused to believe any of it. She wouldn't leave us, Marianne insisted in a tearful TV interview. Angela wasn't someone who just disappeared. Something happened to her. And yet, over time, the town moved on. The vigils stopped. The flyers faded in the rain. Another teacher took over her classroom. Her home was eventually sold. And the case Elm Hollow, PD file #140927, sat collecting dust in a locked cabinet labeled cold. But there were signs, small ones, missed connections, moments lost to time. In late July 2014, a jogger reported seeing a man parked oddly near the Ridgefield Trail with the trunk open, staring at the woods. He never came forward again. In 2015, a former classmate claimed Angela had been dating someone, but didn't know who. She was quieter those last few months, the friend said, like something was bothering her. There were phone records that were never traced. A 911 hang-up call from Angela's address 4 days before she vanished, dismissed as a misdial. Pieces of a puzzle that only made sense in hindsight. And then there was Nathan Cole. Angela had dated him for nearly 4 years, a charming, well-spoken contractor who'd worked on homes across Dauphin and York counties. They met at a fundraiser in 2010. He was older by 8 years, confident, protective, some would say, controlling. They were engaged briefly in early 2013, but the wedding never happened. Angela broke it off that August. No one knows why. She told her mother it just wasn't right, but close friends say she'd grown afraid of Nathan. Not physically, but emotionally. He isolated her, questioned her whereabouts, and once allegedly followed her to a friend's house just to check if she was okay. Nathan disappeared from Elm Hollow not long after the breakup, relocating to Longmont, Colorado, and starting a remodeling company. He never attended a vigil, never spoke to police, and no one pressed him. After all, Angela had vanished without evidence of foul play. There was no crime, not yet. Until March 2023, when her body was found behind a wall in a house Nathan had helped remodel. Records showed he worked on that basement in late 2014, just months after Angela's disappearance. He was subcontracted to correct mold issues and update insulation details buried in old invoices, never reviewed until Detective LeClaire reopened the case. But back in 2014, no one connected the dots. Not the town, not the authorities, not even Angela's family. Sometimes evil doesn't look like a monster. It looks like a fiancé who smiles in pictures, a man who shakes hands at block parties, a contractor who builds walls to hide the broken lives he's left behind. Angela's funeral was held in April 2023, nearly 9 years after she disappeared. Her casket was closed. Hundreds attended. Her favorite hymn, "How Great Thou Art," played softly as white lilies lined the altar. Principal Fisher spoke. So did a former student, now in high school, who remembered how Angela used to let them stay inside during recess when they were bullied. "She made us feel safe," the girl said, wiping tears. "I wish someone had made her feel that way." Angela Dawn was not just a victim. She was a daughter, a teacher, a friend. She loved sunflowers, peppermint tea, and rainy afternoons. She once rescued a stray kitten and named it Oliver. She dreamed of starting a literacy program for underserved kids. Her life was real, her loss immeasurable. They called it a cold case, but now the heat was rising, and the closer the truth came to the surface, the more dangerous it became. The question haunted everyone. How did a woman's body remain hidden in a residential home for nearly a decade? The home at 429 Maplewood Lane had changed hands 3 times since Angela Dawn's disappearance in 2014. The families who lived there never suspected anything. Minor complaints, an odd smell, strange noises in the basement, a cold draft were written off as quirks of an old structure. Nothing, they said, ever pointed to a body decomposing inside the wall. Investigators began reconstructing the timeline, house by house, family by family. The Turners, 2008, 2014. The Turner family were longtime residents of Elm Hollow. Angela knew them. As a teenager, she babysat their children. Their home, later to become the site of her burial, was once a warm and lively place. The Turners sold the home in August 2014, just 2 months after Angela disappeared. The timing was now viewed as critical. Records confirmed that the Turners hired a contractor in September 2014 to renovate the basement and address a mildew issue behind the walls. That contractor was Nathan Cole. He was reportedly on site for 2 weeks, working late hours. He told the homeowners he'd be installing new insulation and fixing foundation rot. They never thought to question him. According to testimony from the Turners' eldest daughter, he often worked with the basement door locked from the inside. They sold the home and left Elm Hollow, never knowing what had happened under their roof. The Sandersons, 2015, 2018. John and Grace Sanderson were the second family to own the home. They had one young son, and they purchased the property in early 2015. During the purchase process, a standard inspection was conducted, but the basement wall in question passed without note. It had been professionally sealed and painted over a clean job, tight to the studs, indistinguishable from the rest of the room. Within weeks of moving in, Grace began to notice something strange. It was this smell, she told investigators. It was faint, almost like damp clothes, but sour. I thought maybe mold. John said it was just the age of the house. They installed a dehumidifier and painted over the walls with anti-mildew primer. Still, the smell never fully went away. In the winter, it worsened. But it was the sounds that began to bother her. A knocking, faint and rhythmic, usually at night. Grace attributed it to the heating system or settling wood, but over time it started to feel deliberate, like it was coming from the wall itself. In 2017, the Sandersons had a plumber investigate possible pipe issues in the basement. He opened a different section of drywall and found nothing unusual. The wall hiding Angela remained untouched. They moved out in mid-2018, citing unexplained stress and uncomfortable feelings in the home. Grace later admitted in an interview that she had recurring nightmares about the basement. The Valencias, 2018-2021. The third owners, the Valencias, were a young couple with no children. The home was a real estate deal they couldn't pass up. They were aware that the basement had been previously renovated and saw it as a bonus. The odd smells were chalked up to poor ventilation. They rarely used the space and kept it mostly for storage. In early 2019, they hired an HVAC specialist to improve air circulation throughout the house. The contractor noted an unusually thick section of the east basement wall, but believed it was just additional insulation or a concrete support block. He marked it as not urgent. In the summer of 2020, the couple hosted a gathering where one of their friends, an architect, made an offhand comment about the asymmetry in the basement's layout. He pointed out how the wall looked like it had been added hastily, possibly as part of a quick repair. The couple never followed up. The Morgans, 2023. The Morgan family purchased the home after it had sat vacant for nearly 2 years. They moved in early March 2023. The house had been cleaned, repainted, and listed as is. A property history search showed nothing alarming. The home passed inspection, like it always had. Within days of moving in, James Morgan began to question the oddity of the eastern wall. It felt cold to the touch, unlike the rest of the basement. The draft behind it raised questions, and the smell, though subtle, became increasingly noticeable. He decided to pull it down. Behind the drywall was a perfectly measured cavity, roughly 5 feet tall, 2 feet deep, and just wide enough to hold a curled human body. The cavity had been constructed using 2x4S and backlined with plastic sheeting, wrapped in insulation foam to conceal odors. The mummified remains had settled into the crevice. It was built to hide something and to last. The technical breakdown. Forensic investigators determined the concealment was methodical. A hidden screw line revealed where the false panel had been attached. Industrial-grade foam sealant filled every gap. A paint match ensured visual consistency. The materials were common, inexpensive, and easy to source. Nathan Cole's contracting background allowed him to build something indistinguishable from the original foundation. His work had gone unnoticed for nearly a decade. The estimated time of concealment was narrowed to late September or early October 2014, less than 4 months after Angela's disappearance. There was no attempt to dispose of her body traditionally, no remote burial site, no river, no ditch. Instead, the killer kept her within reach, sealed into a house that would remain part of the neighborhood. Whether it was out of convenience, panic, or something darker remained to be determined. Missed clues. Investigators launched an internal review of the original missing persons investigation. Several details, now damning, had been dismissed in 2014. A 911 hang-up call traced to Angela's home days before her disappearance. No follow-up. Angela's financial transactions, which stopped suddenly on June 14th, considered inconclusive. A construction permit filed by Nathan Cole under a subcontractor's name for insulation work on Maplewood Lane. Most damning of all, cell tower data had placed Nathan's phone in the vicinity of both Angela's home and Ridgefield Trailhead on the day she vanished. In 2014, the data had not been subpoenaed. In 2023, it helped close the gap in the timeline. Community reaction. As news spread that Angela's body had been hidden behind a wall for 9 years, the town of Elm Hollow was overcome with disbelief and shame. How could this have been missed? How many families had unknowingly shared a home with her remains? The new owners, the Morgans, vacated the property permanently. James and Caitlin refused to return. Their children had been moved to another school district. The township condemned the basement structure. It was later demolished under police supervision. A growing number of residents came forward with stories they had previously ignored: odd construction noises, strange lights late at night during the Turners' final months, and one neighbor's memory of seeing Nathan Cole's truck parked out front long after the house was supposedly vacant. Angela Dawn had been gone for almost a decade, but her presence had lingered just beneath the surface, waiting to be found. And now that she had been, the layers of deception were beginning to fall apart. The arrest didn't happen immediately. When Angela Dawn's body was discovered in the wall of 429 Maplewood Lane in March 2023, there was no immediate suspect. The crime scene offered few direct leads: no murder weapon, no fingerprints, and no surveillance footage from nearly 9 years earlier. But Detective Raymond LeClaire and his team weren't working from scratch. They had a name, a history, and a very specific set of unanswered questions. Nathan Cole. He wasn't hard to find. Nathan had left Elm Hollow quietly in late 2014, just months after Angela vanished. By early 2015, he had relocated to Longmont, Colorado, a quiet suburban city near Boulder. There, he rebranded himself. He founded Cole Renovations LLC, a remodeling company that specialized in restoring older homes. He was active in the community, even volunteering for Habitat for Humanity. To anyone on the outside, he was a hardworking business owner with no criminal record, a clean-cut image, and a calm demeanor. But Angela's name never left his shadow. Tracing the past. By mid-March 2023, forensic analysis confirmed what the team suspected. The hidden cavity in the basement had been constructed professionally, measured with precision, sealed airtight, and blended seamlessly with the original wall. The craftsmanship wasn't amateur, it was deliberate. Detective LeClaire obtained property records and subcontractor logs from 2014. A crucial detail emerged. Nathan Cole had been contracted under a secondary business name, RC Home Solutions, to perform insulation and mold removal at the property in October 2014, 4 months after Angela's disappearance. At the time, no one thought to question it. The Turners, then owners of the home, assumed the work was routine. Nathan had even insisted on working alone. Then came the digital trail. Nathan's name didn't appear on Angela's phone bill, But a closer look into her final weeks showed a series of encrypted messages sent from a number later traced to a temporary burner phone. Investigators tracked that number to a purchase at a gas station near Harrisburg, made with a card belonging to Nathan's company. It wasn't definitive proof, but it tied him to activity around the time of her disappearance. Next came the cell tower data. Angela's phone pinged off a tower near Ridgefield Trailhead at 12:36 p.m. on June 14, 2014, roughly 45 minutes after she was last seen leaving Frankie's Diner. Nathan's phone pinged off the same tower, within the same 10-minute window. It was the first concrete link placing them at the same location, at the same time on the day she vanished. Reopening old files. Detective LeClaire reopened the original case files and cross-referenced them with recently recovered evidence. One item stood out, an unfinished journal entry found in a box of Angela's belongings. The page had no date but appeared to be written in early 2014. It read, "He doesn't yell, he doesn't hit, but I'm scared of how calm he gets when he's angry. It's like watching someone shut down, and I don't know what happens next." She never wrote Nathan's name, but several friends later confirmed that the entry likely referred to him. During interviews, Angela's friend Laura Jensen said Angela had expressed concerns about Nathan following their breakup in August 2013. "She told me he kept showing up at her job, not causing scenes, just watching her. She said she caught him driving past her house more than once." Angela never filed a restraining order. She never reported Nathan to the police. To many, he was just the ex, a chapter she had closed. But Nathan hadn't closed it. The breakthrough. On April 3, 2023, the forensic team received results from trace DNA samples recovered from under Angela's fingernails. One partial match surfaced. Male DNA, consistent with Nathan Cole's profile. While degraded, the markers were strong enough to be admitted as evidence. The final blow came from an item recovered in the wall cavity, a piece of torn fabric stuck to the foam insulation with a small tag reading Cole Renovations. The logo had been updated in 2016, but this version matched the one used in 2014. By now, LeClaire had a solid enough case to move forward. He obtained an arrest warrant. The arrest. Nathan Cole was arrested on April 7, 2023, outside his home in Longmont. He did not resist. Body cam footage later revealed he asked only one question: "Is this about Angela?" He was charged with first-degree murder, unlawful concealment of a body, and obstruction of justice. He was extradited to Dauphin County, Pennsylvania, within a week. News of the arrest spread quickly. In Elm Hollow, it was met with a strange mix of relief and disbelief. Many residents had forgotten Nathan. Those who remembered him were stunned. He'd attended barbecues, shook hands at the church, walked the same streets as everyone else. No one suspected that the man smiling in neighborhood photos had built a tomb in a basement wall. For Angela's family, the arrest brought both closure and fury. "He lived his life," said Victor Dawn during a press conference. "He built his business. He probably slept fine every night while my daughter was rotting in a wall just miles from our home." Motive revealed. During questioning, Nathan denied killing Angela. He claimed she had come to the basement voluntarily to talk, that they argued, that she hit her head during the confrontation, and he panicked. But text message data and diary entries contradicted that narrative. Angela had no intention of seeing Nathan again. She had cut off contact, avoided him, and in her own words, felt unsafe around him. A confidential informant, one of Nathan's former employees, later came forward to say that Nathan had once confessed to a mistake involving an ex back in Pennsylvania. The prosecution's theory was clear. Nathan lured Angela to the house, whether by threat, manipulation, or force. Something happened. He killed her, either intentionally or in a fit of rage, and concealed her body using his knowledge as a contractor. He then walked away, built a new life, and left a secret sealed behind fiberglass and drywall. The fallout. The discovery rocked Elm Hollow. Families who had rented or lived in 429 Maplewood Lane were interviewed. Some blamed themselves. Others spoke of guilt, fear, and emotional trauma. Several families filed lawsuits against the property agency for negligence, though most were dismissed due to statute of limitations. The local government funded a memorial garden outside Willow Creek Elementary, where Angela taught. It features a stone bench beneath a tree planted in her honor. Her name, etched in silver, reads simply, Angela Marie Dawn, beloved daughter, devoted teacher, never forgotten. The town had its answer. Angela's killer had a name and a face, but justice in cases like these often comes with scars that never quite heal. And the trial was just beginning. The trial of Nathan Cole began on November 4th, 2024, in Dauphin County Superior Court. It was one of the most closely watched criminal proceedings in Pennsylvania in over a decade. Cameras were barred from the courtroom, but outside, the media buzzed. National outlets, true crime podcasters, and independent reporters gathered daily on the courthouse steps, many clutching old photos of Angela Dawn. Some were locals who remembered the search posters stapled to telephone poles. Others had followed the case only since the discovery of her body, but everyone had the same question: would justice be enough? Inside, the air was heavy. Rows of oak benches filled with Angela's family, former colleagues, past students now grown, and townspeople who never knew her but felt like they had. The prosecution sat to the left of the courtroom, led by Assistant District Attorney Lynn Mercer, a sharp, composed presence who had a reputation for unraveling the most complex homicide cases. On the right, Nathan Cole sat in a gray suit, clean-shaven, expression unreadable. He did not look like a killer. He looked like a man waiting for a traffic ticket to be read aloud. Opening statements set the tone. Mercer painted the narrative with clinical clarity. A man who could not accept rejection, a plan executed under the guise of a renovation job, a cold-blooded concealment that allowed him to live freely while Angela's body decayed behind a false wall. The defense took a different route, arguing there was no proof of premeditation, that Angela's death was accidental, the result of a tragic fall during an argument, and that Nathan had panicked. Their goal was simple: avoid a murder conviction and push for manslaughter. The prosecution began with the evidence found inside the wall. The piece of torn fabric bearing Nathan's business logo, wedged into the foam insulation. The butterfly pendant still clinging to Angela's neck. The fragment of drywall bearing tool marks that matched Nathan's custom handle screwdriver, recovered from a storage unit in Colorado. A timeline was presented in painstaking detail. Cell phone records, property work logs, GPS traces, and the burner phone data, all pointing back to a single window between late September and early October 2014. Witnesses followed. Angela's parents took the stand first. Marianne, her voice trembling but steady, spoke about the last phone call, the missed birthday that year, and the slow, cruel erosion of hope that followed. Victor, a former firefighter who had pulled bodies from fires and wrecks for over 2 decades, broke down only once when he was asked if he had ever expected to bury his only child without ever saying goodbye. Angela's students, now in their teens, were called next. One girl, now 17, remembered how Miss Dawn gave her a small journal after she was bullied in 5th grade. She said writing made pain smaller, the girl said, so I kept writing. I still do. The most damning witness was Laura Jensen, Angela's best friend, who revealed text messages Angela had sent in the weeks before her disappearance. They were displayed to the courtroom, white text on a black screen. One read, "He's been watching my house again. I don't know what he wants." Another sent only 3 days before she vanished. "If anything happens to me, it's him." Then came the forensic experts. Dr. Alyssa Kim returned to the stand and explained in clear, composed language how Angela's injuries, specifically blunt force trauma to the base of the skull, were consistent with an assault, not a fall. Ligature marks on her wrists, defensive wounds on her arms, signs that she had fought, that she had tried, even in her final seconds, to survive. The defense countered with character witnesses, former co-workers of Nathan who described him as gentle, professional, quiet. A neighbor from Longmont who said he volunteered to build her deck for free. The courtroom listened politely, but no one looked convinced. Then Nathan himself took the stand. He stuck to his story, that Angela had agreed to meet him at the house to talk, that they argued, that she slipped on the unfinished basement floor and hit her head. He said he froze, panicked, didn't know what to do. So he hit her. He said he was sorry, that it was never supposed to happen, but his voice was flat. He looked down as he spoke. Jurors watched him closely, but many said later they were struck by what was missing: remorse. Real, human remorse. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for 6 hours. On November 21st, 2024, the verdict was read in a silent courtroom. Guilty, first-degree murder, concealment of a human corpse, tampering with evidence. Nathan Cole showed no visible reaction. He sat down slowly, straightened his jacket, and stared ahead. The sentence was handed down a week later: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Angela's family didn't cheer. They didn't speak to the cameras outside. They quietly walked to their car, holding a folded photo of Angela in a blue dress, taken on the day she got her teaching certificate. In a short statement released that evening, they wrote, "We finally know what happened. That is not closure. It is only truth." Back in Elm Hollow, the house at 429 Maplewood Lane remained empty. The property was bought by a historical preservation group with plans to tear it down and turn the lot into a community garden. Neighbors no longer looked at the home with fear, only with exhaustion. It had taken too much from too many. Children stopped riding their bikes near it. Realtors stopped listing nearby homes as quiet and peaceful. Even the street felt heavier. The Memorial Garden at Willow Creek Elementary opened in May 2025. It was simple: a stone path winding through a bed of wild sunflowers, a bench beneath a tree planted by Angela's former students, and a plaque that read, "Her light was hidden but never extinguished." Angela Dawn became more than a story, more than a case file. Her name was added to state-level legislation calling for improved tracking of domestic violence patterns. Teachers began using her journal entries as prompts for student writing assignments. Her story became part of Elm Hollow's history, not the way it should have, but the way it had to. Some towns never fully return to normal after something like this. Trust erodes, smiles become guarded, and homes, no matter how many times they're painted, renovated, or repurposed, carry the weight of what happened inside them. The trial ended. The sentence was delivered. But the silence that had once echoed behind a basement wall still lingered in the town's breath, in the eyes of neighbors who had lived above the truth, in the footsteps of those who realized the face of evil had walked their streets in daylight. Justice was served, but closure? That was harder to find.